So .NET Core application development on Linux. See, when we come to Windows application development, we have got two options. One is we use CLI with .NET Code, a very lightweight editor, or we use Visual Studio 2017. Visual Studio 2017 has all that support for development of .NET Core applications which we have even for .NET Framework. Exactly the way we have done in .NET Framework, just say file, new, project, or add the project to the solution, create a console based application, or add a class library or whatever. Even the ASP.NET application, everything remains same, nothing changes. Only thing is, using .NET Core, at least at this point of time with version 2.1, we do not have support for WPF and WinForm application development. These two applications we cannot develop at this point of time. Yes, 3.0 will have those application development also, but in all regards, Windows application development will be binded to Windows operating system only. Even in 3.0, when you are developing WPF application or Universal Windows Platform application or WinForms application, you can execute them on the Windows operating system only. You cannot execute them on Linux. But which aspect of .NET Core is more important to the developers at this point of time? I want to use .NET Core for either development of utility programs, console based applications, or I want to develop something like ASP.NET web based applications. So these kind of applications are what I would like to develop at this point of time using .NET Core. So we have got, these are the different versions of Linux on which we have complete support for .NET Core. .NET Core 2.1 I can say now. So what is important is .NET Core 2.1 treats all the Linux versions as a single operating system. For it is only one. In other words, .NET Core 2.1 has a common .NET SDK for all the Linux and has a common .NET Core runtime. So we have got how many runtimes now? We have got one Linux runtime, we have got one Windows runtime, and we have got one Mac runtime. So there are only 3 runtimes. Though there are so many versions of Linux, we don't need to have for separate version, separate runtime of Linux. Common runtime environment is there for all of them. So in this particular demo, I am going to demonstrate how you can make use of Ubuntu. So there is first option, you can use the handout which I have provided, use this Ubuntu installation and install complete Ubuntu on your local disk as a virtual machine. So first you have to enable Hyper-V. After you enable Hyper-V, you have to download and attach the ISO of Ubuntu to that particular Hyper-V instance, and once it is attached, there is a procedure completely to be followed as given in this particular presentation of how you can make the Ubuntu run on your virtual machine. So there is a procedure, maybe it will take an hour or 2 for you to do that, but just follow the handout. Alternatively, you can simply make use of the Azure. See, this is the diagram where we have 3.0, Universal Windows Platform, WPF, WinForms, and Entity Framework 6 cross-platform. Just telling you, we also have SQL Server for Linux. SQL Server for Linux can also be used for developing GUI, for developing UWP applications today. Sorry, not UWP. SQL Server for Linux can be used for ASP.NET application development today on Linux, complete Linux. Database can be used. Probably I will have one small demo as we progress later, but right now I want to have a feel of how you can do development of Linux if you have an Azure account. That's easy for me. It will not take much time, so I'll use that in my demo. So you just need to provision a Linux virtual machine, for which you need to have an active account. So create one free trial account in case you don't have. Just go to azure.com and from there create a free trial account. And once you have a free trial account, come here to virtual machines. Sorry, virtual machine. This is virtual machine. Click on add. You want to create a new virtual machine. Choose from the list the virtual machine of your choice. I always prefer Ubuntu and Ubuntu 16.04. So this is much stable and we have long-term support for this. So it was released in 2016 and it is still supported. After 2 years, sometime in 2018, we'll have a stable version again from Ubuntu for that. Or if you already have, I'm not sure. So develop the machine now. My Ubuntu server. You can choose the type of disk you want. Keep that SSD. Username. I give something like DSS admin. I want to log in with password rather than giving a SSH public key. I don't have SSH certificate, that otherwise we can use SSH public key. But right now I'll just select password here. I don't want integration with Active Directory, all this fine. Create a new resource group. Click on OK. We have to choose the appropriate size for our virtual machine. We don't need a heavy virtual machine for Linux. Basic configuration with probably 2 GB RAM is more than sufficient. So we'll choose one of them, B1 MS. You can actually, so 2 GB RAM machine is good enough for something like Linux, because we are not going to do any kind of production deployment at this point of time. So we are fine with this. So much is the cost per month. That's a per month cost. So for demo it is okay. I think you can just leave all these options as it is unless you already know Azure. Just disable the boot diagnosis. Boot diagnosis is enabled in case you want to capture images at the time of booting, because only after booting we can have log into the operating system. OS guest operating system log can be only after it has booted. So before booting, how did my system start? All those images, if you want to capture at the time of starting, you may probably want to enable this. Otherwise, just keep everything as it is and click on OK. So I will have my virtual machine ready. Now this particular virtual machine I am going to use for installation of .NET Core. Now installation of .NET Core, rather any software installation on Linux, will not be as simple as in context of Windows. In Windows we simply go and click one exe and then we get one dialog. We click on next and next and next and next and then say finish and everything is over. No, here it is not going to be like this anymore. Here the procedure will be different. So what is that we should do here? The first thing, to connect to that virtual machine, we will need some UI. So that is just a server. Remember, it's a server which does not have a UI of its own. It's not like a Windows server. So to connect to that, you have to download Putty software. So go to this putty.org and download from there the Putty software, and you will get actually a zip file which you have to extract it. This is the extracted version of the putty. Now run the putty software, and here you are supposed to give host name. Now how do you give host name? The username which we gave for the virtual machine or whatever your Ubuntu operating system. Now whether the Ubuntu is in virtual machine or whether the Ubuntu server is physically located somewhere, it doesn't really matter. From now the procedure is same. You physically install Ubuntu in your environment, or you use a virtual machine in Azure, or you use a virtual machine on your Windows box. In all circumstances, the procedure which I am giving you now is the same. So you have to give username which we have given for the root of Linux. @ now we need the IP address. Now in Azure we can get the IP address when we go to that virtual machine. So just go to the VM. You will see the VM here. Still creating actually. It's not created. It will take a couple of more minutes. But we can see the IP address here. Select the virtual machine and we'll have the IP address here. This is the public IP address of the virtual machine. Copy this and so username @IP and say open. Just leave everything as it is. It will ask you, do you want to cache the key? Server host key, SSH key will be created so that next time Putty can directly log you in without asking for all the security information. Say yes, I want to save it. Provide the password. Enter. And I am in. This is my Linux machine. We don't go to the Linux machine. From our machine only we are logged in into the Linux virtual machine which we have created in Azure. So here now there is a procedure which we will have to follow for installation of .NET Core. So right now you see .NET minus version. This doesn't work. The command is not found. If you are not comfortable, you can always go to settings and appearance, and in appearance you may probably want to change the font. I want to take Lucid Console and 16, good enough. Apply. The font will be little bigger. So now we execute the commands for installation of Ubuntu. So I have listed all the commands here. First, we have to update our repository. Sudo is super user do. So do as super user, like we have run as administrator. Here it is sudo apt get. Just right click. What you have copied will get pasted here. You have to right click with mouse to get the content pasted. Don't use Ctrl C, Ctrl V. Or else you have to type. So first the repository is updated with the latest information, and now apt get will upgrade the repository. It will download whatever needed latest as per the information in the repository. apt. Sorry, spelling mistakes. Just say yes. So it will update it. Whatever is missing, only those things it will fetch. And once that is done, we have to install curl command. So curl is basically used for fetching the URLs from server, downloading something from server. For that we use curl. So this action should complete. Windows operating system also does all these things, but the setup does it in background without showing us all these things. So it is like next, 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 like that it is. Yeah, now just again right click, install curl. Curl was already there, that's why it was not installed. It was already there. Then you have to enable Open SSH support. Basically you have to enable this for remote login. But as we are already using PuTTY on the virtual machine, it implies that this command is already there. We don't have to do anything. But if you are using the virtual machine on your desktop, then on that machine you'll have to execute this to enable remote desktop login. I mean remote login, not desktop login, sorry, just remote login. And this is the command required for supporting HTTPS. So HTTPS support. Now there are certain prerequisite dependencies which .NET framework, .NET Core uses. So those dependencies will be fetched by this particular command. So these are all Linux dependencies which .NET Core is dependent on. So copy this, paste here. Some of them might be already there, some of them you'll have to download and install. But these are all dependency libraries which are required for our application. Yes, now we need to do wget for creating a Microsoft product key, for registering Microsoft product as trusted. So this particular key is fetched, and once we have that, these two commands are required. So the key has been fetched and Microsoft site has been registered as safe. From there now software can be installed on our machine. Otherwise, see why we say Linux is secured. Simply something cannot be downloaded and installed unless you have given permission. So same thing here. So now that key will be upgraded by executing apt update. So whatever we have initialized, whatever key information has been fetched here, all that will be actually fetched when we say update. So the package now have been installed. Now this is the main command which is required for installing .NET SDK. So this will take a while. Right click and say yes. So much amount of data will be downloaded. We are good with it. And we'll have to wait now for the 376 MB of data to be downloaded and installed. So on completion of these steps, we will have .NET Framework, .NET Core ready on our machine. ASP.NET Core runtime is also coming. .NET SDK, complete .NET SDK is downloaded actually. So you can actually develop and deploy not only basic console based application, but also you can deploy ASP.NET applications here. And you can do development also, because we do have all the CLI commands and Visual Studio Code support for it. And once this is completed, we are going to just verify if .NET is there or not by executing the same old command, .NET version. Yes, it's done. So just clear first and say .NET -version and perfect. We have .NET 2.1, but if you want complete information, -info, and it gives you complete information. So .NET Core SDK 2.1 is there. Ubuntu operating system, OS version 2.1, host, that is the runtime, rather these are the runtimes and their respective directories in which they are installed. User share.net. So this machine is now ready for executing, not even executing, because we have installed .NET SDK. This machine is even ready for development of .NET applications, .NET Core applications. So let's say mkdir, some demo, cd demo. Right now nothing is there, it's empty. ls we have to use, ls -l for listing all the files, so total 0. So now what is the command? Whatever we have done on Windows box, the same commands are going to work now. So .NET new, let's say console, and we have .NET Core blah 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 blah, read that later. But what is important is we have the project created, csproj, and we have the program file created. You can now say what? .NET build. It's going to build the project in the current directory, generate the bin folder. So we have bin. Now you can say .NET run. We got .NET executed. The hello world program has executed successfully. You can always edit this file, make changes to it, rebuild it and execute. Or else you can say .NET bin / debug / runtime / the .dll file. Same thing. Just say .NET run, or you write this command. Now what is important is I want to actually download this DLL file on my local machine. And on my local machine, which is a Windows box, I would like to execute that program. That means I have built an application on Ubuntu Linux and I would like to execute that on my local server or local machine, which is Windows box. Basically, I want to demonstrate .NET Core is interoperable. Likewise, yes, we can always develop .NET application locally on a Windows box and move them onto the Linux box and execute it. We can do that as well. So now, what is the requirement? Now we want to, how to get this file? Remember, this is a different machine. So the best way you can get this file is using FTP. So for FTP, you will need to install something like FileZilla, which is a free software on your machine. So install FileZilla, open that, and here we will have to establish an SSH connection with server. So give here the IP address of the server. How to get the IP address? I showed you. From Azure you can get, but if you are using a virtual machine, just type here ifconfig. Through ifconfig you are going to get the IP address. The IP address which is shown here right now is the private IP address. It will not show you public IP address for virtual machines in Azure. In cloud you are not going to get a public IP address using ifconfig. So in cloud virtual machines you have to go to the portal, Azure portal, or even if you have AWS account, even there also you can do all these things. Using AWS account, create a virtual machine which is Ubuntu, and AWS will give you the IP address. So that IP address we have to provide here. Copy, provide the IP address, change this to SFTP, SSH file transfer protocol. You have to change it. Provide the username, and the password, the remote the remote login password what we have created at the time of creating the virtual machine, the root password, and say connect, and we are connected. This is now demo folder. In demo folder we have bin, debug, .NET Core, and these are the files. So first let us bring only demo.dll. I drag and drop demo.dll. So now I go to the command prompt, d:\.NET demos. I have demo.dll. So type here .NET demo.dll. Error. We don't have basically the dependency, some information about whatever runtime information is needed. So we actually also need this file .demo runtime config.json, which is actually there. Demo runtime config.json. Drag and drop this, and that file has all the required information. Type demo.runtime config.json. So it is clearly saying the runtime required for execution of the program is .NET Core 2.1 and so is the framework. Now execute .NET demo.dll, and it worked. No rebuild. Whatever program I have downloaded from server, as it is, that program has executed now on the local machine without any problem. Likewise, you can actually develop a .NET application here, like I have done in Hello World app. Just say .NET build, all succeeded. Just try first .NET run. Hello 2 again, something based on our previous program. This was already existing application. So this output I should now get in Linux. This is command prompt of Windows. So I do what? I go back and I'll copy here. First let us create a folder. Hello demo, some name, anything is okay. And now Hello World app, bin, debug, the framework, and the DLL with the runtime JSON file. Copy this into Hello World. Copy this to here. So using FTP I have moved only those two files. Now let's go to putty. This is putty. cd space ls. We should have here hello demo. So cd, oh, it has become hell demo, and .NET demo.dll. Oh, something wrong. Hello world app.dll. Now the problem is what? It's not able to execute because it does not have execute permission. It has only read and write permission. Execute permission is not there. So use chmod 777. Basically execute, read, write, all the things we are giving now. Space hello world. Now let us check up. We have X, that is execute permission. So now say .NET hello hello world app dot dll, spelling mistake, hello, okay, I wrote hell, .NET DLL. That's it. It's case sensitive, right? W is different here. So just type tab, automatically it will take it. See .NET tab .dll, and we have the program running. So basically a Windows compiled output is executing on Ubuntu, and Ubuntu compiled output we are able to execute on Windows. That is actually the power of .NET Core. You can continue your development on Windows box and eventually deploy it in the Linux box. For example, we have got Raspberry Pi. It's a very small computer, very small computer, like your credit card. That computer will be of that size. .NET Core development is not possible on Raspberry Pi, but .NET Core runtime is possible. SDK is not there, but runtime is there. So you can develop Raspberry Pi applications on Windows using the Raspberry Pi simulator and eventually execute them on the Raspberry Pi Raspbian operating system. So Raspbian is again one flavor of Linux where we have support for .NET Framework runtime, not for .NET Framework. .NET Core is a runtime. .NET Core SDK is not there. So with this, I conclude basic CLI commands on Linux. But actually speaking, what you have noted is the CLI commands on Linux and CLI commands on Windows are not different. They're all same. The development of .NET Core applications on Windows and development of .NET Core applications on Linux is same. And that is the beauty of .NET Core over .NET Framework. And that is why I say .NET Core is going to be a head-on competition with Java and Python, which really have big edge on Linux operating system, Mac operating system. .NET is there now, and it will have a good library enhancement with time, and it will become more and more popular there also. That's all, guys. Thank you.